Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back. My name is notiansans. This, of course, is Learn How to Edit Stuff. I just spilled my coffee all over the ground, but today we are taking your requests for a tutorial. Last week I got an Instagram DM from a longtime viewer of this channel, Aussie Sofa, and he sent me this video and he said, I don't know how the hell they do this effect. Well, guess what, Aussie? We're doing it today. Now this effect is the Polaroids kind of floating in space-time. Let's roll the clip. This is what we're going to be creating today. We are going to be pushing through a realistic scene and comping in fake Polaroid images, and it transitions into a video clip. This has been done in 13 Reasons Why. Yes, I know that other people like Cinecom have done tutorials on this exact effect, but the Cinecom one specifically was more of an ad for an LG curved monitor and they didn't actually really show you anything. Anyway, Ozzy wants me to teach you guys how to do this effect, so I will teach you guys how to do this effect. We are working in Adobe After Effects today. If you guys want to download the clip in the video description we will be working with, the link is posted below. Download the clip, open up After Effects, because we are getting started right now. All right, kiddos, After Effects is already open. I have already named my project the Polaroid effect, and I've imported a couple things into my After Effects library, mainly the pictures that I'm going to be using inside of the Polaroids, the Polaroid image itself, and a new composition, which is 1920 by 1080 at 30 seconds long, and it is named Polaroids Master. Now, the first thing you're gonna wanna do is find an image online of a Polaroid that you wanna use. I found this one on Google, so I'm gonna drop it onto my timeline, scale it down, and the first thing we're gonna do is actually mask this Polaroid out of the background image by clicking on the pen tool and just selecting the area of the Polaroid so we don't get any backgrounds. Now what we're gonna do is cut out the middle using the same masking technique. And nothing happens once we complete the mask, but once we tool down masks and go to mask 2, we set it from add to subtract, and now the middle is gone, and now we have a nice Polaroid image that we have cut out for ourselves. One thing I like to do in an effect like this is not just keep it a blank Polaroid. I mean, this is kind of okay, but it's a little bit boring as well. So what I wanna do is texturize this Polaroid a little bit. So I'm gonna drag a random grunge texture that I found on Google as well, down onto my timeline, looks something like this, and I'm gonna turn the hiding on that layer, and then on my Polaroid layer, I'm gonna come right up here to my effects and presets, type in text U, and drop a stylize texturize effect right on that Polaroid. Then under our effect controls, we're gonna set the texture layer from none to that texture layer that we already dropped into our timeline. And if I zoom in here, you'll see that it is giving it kind of a grunge texture. Now I can change this from tile to center or center to stretch, whatever you guys think looks good on that Polaroid. And I'm going to turn the light direction, I don't know, to something that I think looks cool. And I'm gonna turn the texture contrast down a little bit, somewhere in the 0.4, 0.5 range looks good. And now we have kind of texturized this Polaroid and we are ready to start dropping our images in. I'm going to select those two layers by hitting Shift and clicking all the way to the bottom. Shift Control C on my keyboard to pre-comp, and I'm going to call this Polaroid Base and click OK. Now what we're gonna do is come over here to our photos, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 photos that I wanna use in these Polaroids. So I'm just going to duplicate this Polaroid base 7 times. I've already got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Excellent, looking great. I'm gonna take my first image and just drag and drop that underneath layer 1, and I'm going to scale that image down, and I'm going to fit it in the Polaroid frame, just like so. Then take my mask, and I'm going to just mask that photo into the square. And now the last thing I'm gonna do is take that Polaroid base with my image, Shift Control C to pre-compose, and name this Beach Walk, okay? Now I'm just gonna turn that off in my composition. And what I'm gonna do now is for every photo base that I have down here, I'm just going to add a new photo, scale it appropriately. So I have a bunch of Polaroid photos that are not the same. Again, pre-comp, don't forget to name them so we can keep everything nice and organized. And you're gonna do this for however many photos that you guys have. And I'm going to fast forward through this part so that you don't have to watch me just do this a million times. Great, now that we've got all of our photos into our Polaroids, we actually need to create 2 more. I severely underestimated the amount of Polaroids that we would need for this tutorial, but 2 more is not a big deal. All we're gonna do is open up one of them, copy this Polaroid base into our Polaroids master folder, and now we can create 2 more just by duplicating it on top of itself. One of them, what we're gonna do is create a black solid, put it underneath the Polaroid base, and I'm going to mask that out because we just want a blank Polaroid. And you could say, well, Ian, the background's already black. Actually, no, it is an alpha layer, and we need to create a black layer on the inside of it. Haha, fooled you there. So we're gonna name that one blank Polaroid. And then this last one right here, we are going to pre-compose and call this video layer. Great. We've got all of our Polaroids ready to rock and roll. Now the next thing we need to do is keep our project folder organized, guys. Come on. Let's create a new folder and call this Polaroids. And we're going to drop all of our compositions into that Polaroids folder just so we can keep everything nice and organized. The next thing you're going to want to do is import that video that you downloaded in the video description below. If you want to follow along or use your own video, it doesn't matter to me. Take that video that you've imported into After Effects and drag and drop it onto this new composition button. It will throw your video footage on a timeline and make it the exact time that you need it to be. And the next thing we're going to do is come right over here to our tracker window, click on tracker, and hit track camera. And that is going to make After Effects track the camera movement in the video that you have inserted on the timeline. Now, I've already tested this footage to make sure that it works. Your footage may be a little bit shakier, a little bit crazy. You might not get as good of tracking points. So if you want to follow along just to learn, download the video in the video description below or try your own footage. We're almost done analyzing. And once After Effects solves for the camera, you'll get a bunch of weird points in your footage. And what exactly does this mean? Well, all of these are points that After Effects has tracked. And basically what this has done is created a digital camera that we are going to use to push past our photos in 3D space. And the thing that I like to do here is find a target image that is facing directly towards the actual camera that we use. So right here looks good. Click on that and then right click and go to create solid and camera. And what that's going to do is create a 3D camera in our scene and a solid as well. And we're going to use that solid for positioning data when we bring our Polaroids in, because this is kind of the farthest point in Z space in my scene that I want my Polaroids to exist. And that will make a little bit more sense in just a second. So what we're going to do is actually turn the hiding of that layer off. And we're going to come over here to our Polaroids master layer, and we are going to turn them all on. Click one, hold down shift, come all the way down to the bottom, copy, go into our scene here, paste. And we're going to turn all of these off for now just so we can work with one Polaroid, and then we're going to copy and paste all of those attributes to the other one. So we're on the blank Polaroid now. I'm going to turn it into a 3D layer. Then I'm going to click my solid, hit P on the keyboard, and I'm going to copy this position data. So Control C, click on my blank Polaroid, hit P on the keyboard, and I'm going to paste that positioning data right there. And that is going to stick it all the way on where that solid was created. So now if I scrub through this, that Polaroid is just stuck on really nicely already. And I don't really have to do much, but it's gigantic. I don't want it to be that big. I want it to look like the size of a normal Polaroid. So what I'll do is I will hit S on the keyboard under this blank Polaroid, and I will scale it down to look semi-realistic. Here's some Christmas cards for scale. Maybe that looks about good. You guys can do whatever you want, whatever you think looks best. Maybe 35 on the scale looks good for this. And that's all I'm going to do there. Now, I'm going to turn on all these other Polaroids, just like so. I'm going to make them all 3D, just like so. Then I'm going to highlight all of them by clicking on my first one, holding down shift, clicking on the last one. And underneath this little magnifying glass here, I'm going to type in position. And it will bring up the position data for all of my layers that I have highlighted. So what I'm going to do is copy the position for the blank Polaroid by hitting Control C on the keyboard. Then by clicking and holding down Control, I'm going to click on every other position on all of these layers, just like so. Then I'm going to just hit Control V to paste those attributes, and it will paste the positioning data. With all of these still selected, let's type in scale, and let's copy the scale from the blank Polaroid. Control C. Click on scale, hold Control, and highlight all of the other scales for all of the other layers. And then we just hit Control V. And now we are starting from the same exact place for every single Polaroid that we have in our scene. This is a very important step because you want everything to be uniform. You want everything to match. And now what we're gonna do, guys, is we're gonna just start placing all of these photos in 3D space by using these X, Y, and Z sliders over here in our scene. The Z one is kind of pointing towards camera, X is this red one pointing to the right, and Y is the green one pointing up, and we can start moving these in 3D space. So I'm gonna take my After Effects one, which is this bottommost layer. Holding down Shift will move it through Z space or any axis much faster. So we're gonna pull it out here towards camera, pull it down on the Y axis, maybe stick it over here on the X-axis, and that's gonna be my first image. Let's go to the burger photo. Same thing, hold down Shift, and just kind of drag it in Z space. On the Y-axis, on the Z-axis, and you can check where they're gonna be in 3D space by just giving it a scrub through. And we're already passing those first couple images here, so maybe I wanna go a little bit farther back on the Z-axis with this guy. And do this however you guys want. There is no rhyme or reason. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. Basically, what you're gonna wanna do is just kind of position these in 3D space so that it looks cool. And do make sure that you're using the axis lines. If you grab just the image itself and you're not moving it on any sort of axis, sometimes you'll get some weird results. So make sure that when you hover over this little arrow, it is turning into an X, a Z, or a Y. I feel like that's kind of important. And now I'm gonna skip over my video layer because this is gonna be the one that goes at the very end, and I'm gonna take this blank Polaroid and I'm just gonna pepper them in. So I've got the one here, great. I'm gonna hit Control D on the keyboard to duplicate that blank Polaroid, and I'm just gonna kind of put these in random spots all over my scene just to kind of fill space. Remembering to move along the axis. Duplicate that. Maybe we'll move this down on the Y over here. Again, there is no rhyme or reason. There is no right or wrong way of doing it. It is just kind of whatever you guys want to use. Now, once the camera reaches the end, this is where our video is going to play. So what you're gonna wanna do is click on your blank Polaroid and kind of move it in Z space so it fills the frame almost entirely. A good rule of thumb is kind of the edges of the Polaroid making a nice little border on the outside of your frame. And guys, if you've made it this far, you should be really proud because that is the baseline version of how to make your Polaroids kind of float in 3D space. It's actually a lot easier than you probably thought by creating and tracking that camera through your scene and then making that camera in the solid and then copying and pasting all of the position data from After Effects to your existing assets. You want to let the computer do the work instead of sitting there and trying to like mathematically figure out where in 3D space all your assets will live. That makes no sense. Let the computer do the work. After Effects is probably smarter than you are, so let it do its work. The last thing we're gonna do now is find a video that we wanna transition into and then do that transition in our scene. Let's do that right now. Scrub on your timeline to right where you want the transition to happen, which is right about here. You want the Polaroid mostly filling the frame just like so. And we're gonna double click on that video layer Polaroid, like that. Then you're gonna drop in your video into After Effects that you want to be inside that frame. Drop that onto your timeline and find the point in the video where you're gonna want the transition to happen. For me, it's right about there. I'm gonna scale this down so it fits in my frame nicely. Then, once you've got your placement, right click on that video layer, go to Time and Freeze Frame. And then I'm just gonna mask this out. So now if we go back to our living room walk scene, we're pushing through all the Polaroids, everything is looking really cool, and then we've got it landing on this freeze frame here. So the next thing we're gonna do, guys, is just create a new composition, new composition, 1920 by 1080, 30 seconds long, sure. And then we're gonna drop our composition with all of our photos right down onto our timeline here, scrub all the way to the end where you want the transition to happen, so right about there, and then drop your original video layer in underneath, mute that top layer, find your video where you want it to start, which for me is right about there, turn on your top layer, hit T on the keyboard, lower the opacity, and then what you're gonna do is match the scale and position with your original video underneath, just so it lines up exactly. And you can kind of see by the ghosting right here that I'm just scaling and positioning it so it lines up exactly with my Polaroid. Right there looks absolutely perfect. Then what we're gonna do is create 2 keyframes on our Polaroid composition layer. Opacity, I'm gonna go over 1, 2, 3, 4 keyframes. Create another one. I'm gonna turn my second keyframe to 0 and my first keyframe to 100. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we have now just created a transition from Polaroid to our original footage. And now you guys can take it a step further and you can go a little bit crazier with this. You can do a turbulent displaced transition. You can do a scale in push transition. Using the opacity keyframes are kind of the easiest and most simple to explain, but you guys can let your imagination run wild and transition into this however you want. The last thing I would recommend doing is coming into your Polaroid layers, highlighting everything inside your composition and turning on motion blur, which is just gonna help sell it just a little bit more. And now guys, you have created a very cool Polaroids floating in 3D space and then transitioning into a video on your own. If you followed the tutorial today, congratulations, you've just done something cool. Hopefully you learned something new, learned something cool that you can now incorporate into your own videos. The main takeaways that I want you guys to take away from this video is using the 3D camera tracker inside of After Effects, letting it track your scene and then letting After Effects do all the heavy lifting for you. There's no point in you sitting there and fiddling with like things in Z space and rotation things and like let After Effects do all the heavy lifting. It is generating a lot of data. All you have to do is know where to kind of copy and paste that data. So we made our own Polaroids. We copied and pasted all the positioning data from that camera and solid that we made at the very beginning. And then all of our Polaroids are kind of stuck in time in 3D space, and it looks really clean because it's following all of the data that After Effects has already kind of spit out at you. Was that confusing? I hope it wasn't confusing. I get really excited about data in 3D space or whatever. But anyway, we're gonna do a little recap because we always do. What you're gonna do is open up After Effects, get some photos in and the image of the Polaroid that you want to use, and you're gonna fake create all of your different Polaroid images. Drop in your video layer, hit the 3D camera tracker button, and let After Effects do the heavy lifting. Copy and paste that positioning data onto all of your Polaroid frames so that they are stuck in 3D space, and then kind of manipulate them in Z space, Y space, and X space, making sure that you kind of grab onto those access lines and not kind of free move it in your scene. Otherwise, weird things may happen. I can't guarantee that they will, but they might. They just might. Once you've done that, you're gonna take your video layer Polaroid and you're gonna create a freeze frame from the video. You're gonna line it up exactly where you want the transition to happen, drop that composition into a new composition and line it up underneath with your video layer, and then make a 4 or 5 frame opacity transition or whatever transition you guys want really into that video, and then you've created something really cool and unique. I would like to thank Ozzy Safa for the tutorial suggestion, so thank you, Ozzy Safa. If you guys use this tutorial to make something cool, tag me in it on social media at notiansans on Twitter and Instagram. I want to see what you guys create. If you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel and also check out the last video that you missed. We do them here weekly at Learn How to Edit Stuff. Again, hit me up on social media if you want to see a tutorial from me specifically designed for you. Subscribe to the channel, check out the last video that you missed, and I will see you next time.